What is good, camp believers and high performers? I am your podcast host and high performance mentor and dietitian, Dezi. Welcome to another Mentorship Monday. And so if this is the first time you're hearing this, we had actually started this about 3 weeks ago, where our first episode, we dove into those cascading habits, because oftentimes I tend to find with most people, they get really stuck in creating 5 to 6 things to do every day. And so when they don't do the first one, they end up not doing the additional 5. And so that just gets them down the shame spiral. And then before you know it, they do nothing. And then nothing turns into a month, turns into 6 months, and a year. And before you know it, someone's stuck, right? And so in week 1, we dove into cascading habits. In week 2, what we tried to do was to try to address the mindset behind, if you want to change your habits, you have to change your identity. And so if you haven't had a chance, make sure you go back, listen to those episodes, because each and every one of these Mentorship Mondays, it is going to go in the same way that I teach habits to a lot of my one-to-one high-performing clients. Is we try to habit stack. So when we're successful with one thing, we throw an additional thing on that cascades. And so in a lot of ways, the way that I mentor and the way that I coach, I'm going to do the same thing with podcasting. So with week 3, the big thing that I want us to really address today is going to be our default habits, or what I like to refer to oftentimes as your fault habits. So that's kind of layered, right? So in so many ways, if you have habits right now that you want to unlearn, one, this might be out of the bag for a lot of you, and I'm just being really honest. If you have habits up to this point that are not serving you and that you don't feel really great about, it's okay to take ownership with it. It's going to be your fault. And in the same ways, as you start to educate yourself, that's the point where you start to be accountable. So when you educate yourself and understand your habits, as you do the habit the next day and the day after that, that's where you are making a conscious choice to continue to engage in that habit if it's serving you or if it's not serving you. So it kind of goes both ways. So I like to think of these default habits as those, or your autopilot habits. And so we're going to address today the habits that are not serving you. Okay. And oftentimes when we look at it too, like, this is a little bit more known as your default bias. All right. So it's something that you constantly and oftentimes subconsciously do without even really thinking about it. Because usually when you're engaging in an activity or a behavior that's not serving you, but it's something that you've always done, there isn't really a whole lot of energy release that needs to happen. And there really isn't a whole lot of willpower that needs to happen as well, because it's minimized, because it's something that you've always done. Now, to break this down, I kind of want to, and I wrote some notes here. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to get to see the visual that we have here. But I kind of want to walk you through the path and bring some examples to you that are really going to help. So obviously, as a registered dietitian, one of the biggest autopilot habits or your fault habits that tends to happen is this example of mindless eating. And so for those who have never engaged in mindless eating, let me kind of break it down to you. Let's say usually around getting off of work, after dinner, something like that, where willpower is down and you're used to just watching some Netflix and having a snack, right? The classic example that most dietitians learn and then that we see in behavior is going to be some of those high reward snacks, right? The high reward snacks are those that have the most rewarding flavor. Usually we try to break them down into things like salt, sugar, fat, and those right there, because there are high reward things along with, and I already said sugar. So along with those 3 things, those are going to be the highest reward of flavors. And generally speaking, those are the most tastiest things that we have, right? I always oftentimes joke with my clients, this is a reason why the food companies are the billionaires that they are, because they understood human psychology way before we could even get the research out of what high reward does to our brain, right? We get that dopamine rush and it feels good. So if you're used to mindlessly eating while you're watching TV, or even on the energy side, right? Even on the exercise side, if you're used to just getting home and decompressing with TV or on your phone, or some are really prone to just like having a couple drinks right as they get home instead of possibly going for a walk and unlearning those habits that aren't serving them and learning new ones, but they get caught up in this, not only just past conditioning of what they usually do, but it takes the least amount of willpower just to open up a couple of beers and just to decompress or to throw on that Netflix while you have something in hand. So when we go back to this mindless eating example, it's something that we constantly see. I can tell you 100% that as someone has come in as someone who really wants to yearn to be that high performer in their life, when we look at their habits, I mean, I build my program around 4 pillars. And so we have strength and conditioning, We obviously have a huge nutrition component. We have sleep hygiene. And then the fourth one we have is going to be your non-exercise activity as well as your mindfulness. I like to kind of group those things together because you can do those things together. So when we start to address the nutrition piece, it's really about unlearning a lot of behaviors and things that you've done for yourself that you're just not really aware of. And this is how we're going to really try to battle these autopilot or default habits. And with the example of our mindless eating, we're really going to try to make sure for you that you understand that the way that we get through that is mainly getting you to a point where you're being mindful about where you are in the moment. Because if you've developed these types of habits, you probably feel weird. And then going back to the example of your mindless eating, as you're developing that habit, you probably feel weird during a day if you don't sit down and binge on Netflix and have that snack, have those chips, have cupcakes, like whatever that is for you, right? Whatever your high reward food is, it probably feels weird not to do it if you're totally conditioned to continue to do that. And it's funny too, because a lot of studies, and in this study in particular, they had people eat popcorn while they were watching a movie, right? But instead of just eating popcorn, and this is the example that I like to use with a lot of people when they're like, well, what the heck is mindless eating? It's like, all right, so so let's think about the last time that you went to a movie theater. And so for our listeners out there and those who are going to watch it on YouTube or even on IG, I just want you to kind of picture yourself here with me for a second. So it's obviously it's 2021. Movies have just barely opened up. So if you can kind of think back, maybe recently or previously before the pandemic, when you went to a movie, I mean, how many of us have gotten a really big bag of popcorn, threw whatever you had on it? Like, I'm no judge. I like butter, right? So how many of you have gotten that bag of popcorn? You sit down and then halfway through the previews, you're like, oh my God, you look down your popcorn and like a quarter of it or half of it is all the way through. And you're like, what the heck happened to my popcorn? Well, there's your mindless eating example. All right. And so what this study did is they asked people to eat popcorn while they were watching a movie, knowing that most people are going to engage in mindless eating. But what they had them do, and this is the caveat, as a dietitian, this is kind of the first 5 techniques that we help people to understand when they are really struggling with emotional or mindless eating. What they had the people do is to eat with their non-dominant hand. Right. And so for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, that means if you're a righty, they asked you to eat popcorn with your left hand. Okay. And so what they found through this study is that the people that ate with their non-dominant hand ended up eating at least 40% less. Now, I'm not someone who is telling you like, hey, popcorn is bad. You always need to eat less. But what this study had them do is it had them being mindful of the moment. It had them get out of that autopilot habit of just kind of stuffing their face while they're watching TV and to get into their body. Okay. So this is the way that we try to remove our autopilot habits by helping to condition you to be present in your body. Because how many of us have either done that one example of mindless eating, or how many of us have just mindlessly gotten to a point where we know how the benefits of exercise, we know the benefits of deep breathing, we know the benefits of meditation, we know the benefits of getting our asses to bed at 9 p.m. because we know how much energy we have for the next day, but we just don't do it. Because that right there is a really good example of an autopilot that is an autopilot habit, rather, that is not serving you. So the one way that we get through that is to get back into your body. Okay. I was having a really good conversation with one of our high performing clients the other day, and they were talking about how usually around 9 o'clock, they're putting the kids down and like, that's their decompression time. So what they have been doing and engaging in is mindless eating, just eating out of just emotional decompression. Now I want to tell you that emotions and food have their place, right? In the same way that emotions and exercise, emotions and sleep, emotions and mindfulness always are going to have their place here. But what I had this person do is right at 9 p.m., we started going through some deep breathing techniques, kind of checking back in with their body. And this is just a 7-minute exercise, right? And so what we had them do was, instead of just constantly going to that 9 p.m., going to the fridge, turning something on and just kind of like mindlessly snacking. And then before you know it, at 10 p.m., it's like, holy crap, look at all the food that I just ate. I don't feel good. I also don't feel good emotionally that I just did this again. This is something that I'm really struggling with. And I can tell you that as high performers come in that are looking to become that high performer that they need, food is oftentimes what they view as a huge crutch. It's something that they really struggle with because they're not really feeling good about their relationship with food. And so because this is one aspect of the pillars of what we do inside of our high performers one-to-one program, it's going to be really big just to be back in your body. And so what we had this person do over a week's time is to say like, okay, at 9 o'clock from 9 to 9:07, we're going to do some deep breathing. And as you're doing this deep breathing, you're going to just sit in your body. What emotions are coming up for you? Visualizing yourself being successful through this one moment. And what we found is that getting back into your body actually helped this person to produce just feelings of like, I just want some comfort and some safety right now, because damn, like I'm busy with the kids, I'm busy with work, I'm overwhelmed. Like I just wanted food. And so what we did from there is we examined that and took ownership, threw in a huge dose of self-compassion, and then said, okay, what's the next best right thing? And so for this person, what they found is like, you know what, like nothing good happens after 9:30 p.m. for me. So I'm going to go ahead, do my deep breathing exercise from 9 to 9:07. I'm going to take my butt upstairs. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to hydrate, and I'm going to go to bed. And it was tremendous to see that type of evolution. And this is kind of where, as listeners and viewers right now, and this is going to be your homework. Okay. So for today, like, again, we're learning autopilot or default habits, or like I said at the beginning of the pod, your fault habits of things that are not serving you. And the best way to do this is, one, to take ownership behind them, to be present in your body, and then to do that next best right thing. And so what I want you all as listeners and viewers right now to do is I want you to screenshot this episode. I want you to tag me, and I want you to comment on one autopilot habit that you have been engaging in, right? Because ownership is going to be our best friend here. Right. So I want you to comment on one autopilot habit that doesn't serve you, and let me know how or which behavior you would like to replace that with. Right. What thing that you're going to do to get back in your body. So that next best right thing. So that might be deep breathing for you. That might be communicating to your significant other at home. That might be calling a friend. That might be writing down in your journal, really visualizing yourself getting past that autopilot habit that is no longer serving you. And this could go across the board with alcohol use. This could go across the board with tobacco use. This could go across the board with workaholism. I mean, yeah, people, let's get real. For those of us who have worked from home, we're probably finding that if we had a conventional 8 to 5 job, that we're probably working a bit more than we were when we were at the office. Okay. So is it workaholism? Is it going back to your phone? Like, we really want to try to unlearn these habits that are no longer serving us. So that's your homework for today. All right. Let me go to repeat myself. If you're listening this on, wherever you get your pods, I want you to take this homework item and visualize yourself being successful. So you're going to screenshot the episode. You're going to shoot me a tag at Dezi Abeda, comment on one autopilot habit that no longer is serving you, and go ahead and comment on one thing that you're going to do to get back in your body. All right. So we gave some examples there. So this process about becoming the high performer that you need to become is not a perfect process, but damn it has to be consistent. Okay. Much love to you all. Happy motherfrickin' Monday. I'll catch you on Friday with another beautiful pod from a hero story of something that I'm really excited to share with you all. So if you listen up to this point, shout out to you. Love y'all. Later.